I don't know that we've maximized it.
This year's budget, I think we've got 60,000 in there
Mhm.
total for the use of that. It's a pretty good number of days that, where they have 300 a day,
Something like that, yeah.
where we pay for the crews.
But they've got all the tools, they've got the people that know, generally know what
Right.
they're.
And of that 60,000, none of that is for the litter picks. If it's true to the litter pick, we don't pay anything for it. So there's a fair number of days that are loaded in there.
Well, losing that summer help, that's what I was thinking about, was some of, maybe they could help out some of that in that.
Yeah, that's a good point, Rod. We do use them exclusively, so, or not exclusively, but we do use them frequently, I should say. I think they've been out maybe a half dozen, maybe a dozen times this year, so helped us out with things.
I want to go back to a point that Dave brought up, and that is if we're not doing the crack seal, and if that's setting us up for some significant layouts in the future, I think that's something we're going to have to adjust. Is there a plan to look at those numbers again, or is this just?
I think there is a plan to look at those numbers. I think that we'll probably try to adjust our operations. I don't know if we'll be purchasing crack seal next year or not. Now, can we get by 1 or 2 years without doing it? We probably can, but we run into significant problems later on down the road.
I think,
You know, we can backfill from other departments possibly and fill those positions, but it is a pretty labor-intensive operation. So if you take from one department, then you're not doing something in another department as well.
I think we'll look at how we prioritize the use of that 20,000. There's $20,000 in general street for seasonal. That's
Right.
roughly 1/3. It's 20/57. It's roughly 1/3 of the existing budget. We need to be very deliberate in how we prioritize that 20,000, and it could be that this is the absolute #1 thing to do out of all of the things that Jim was mentioning. And between leveraging the limited seasonal dollars, some of the overtime that we have, and then redeployment, try to tackle it so that we're not setting ourselves up for significant problems later.
Scares me that we give up 30,000 and then 5 to 10 years down the road, we spend
$3 million.
And if
millions to replace the road that.
And if
we
I
did.
could just speak to that real quick, I mean, we're talking, you know, we have 2 FTEs in park and 3 in streets. We don't have enough people to perform these functions. It's not so much the cost that, you know, we're thinking about, it's just we don't have the staffing levels. And that's why we need that seasonal influence in the summertime, because we add those bodies so we can perform those functions. But, you know, if you don't have enough people, it's costing you money. You know, if you have too many people, it costs you money, but if you don't have enough, it costs you money as well.
somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think the message is that we're not doing the crack seal program. I think the message is that crack seal work is some of that work that the seasonals would typically be doing.
Yes,
They're
sir.
still going to do crack seals as we can and as we get
Oh.
training in those areas. I believe we've completely wiped out crack seals in the budget for 2011.
No.
Those are just the areas that Jim mentioned, a number of areas where we use seasonals.
Okay.
So if we reduce that budget by 2/3, those are just the areas where we'll have impacts, but we have to be very deliberate about mitigating those impacts. And I think this is an area where we have to be very careful. And certainly, you know, this is a proposal, that $185,000 numbers is not set in stone. It's a number that we got to, providing a balanced approach to this budget. It could go up a little amount, it can go down. I mean, there's lots of change that could happen to that. And as we think about, you know, where we go next with this, on the next slide is the schedule, and then there's a slide about your deliberations. But in 2 weeks, we have another work session. 2 specific items. I'm sure there'll be some other items on the agenda, but the two big ticket items in 2 weeks are the final report from FCS on the utility rates and some of the more detailed information that you've requested, and then your deliberations on that. And then you'll have had a couple weeks with your budget notebooks and have to think about the things we've been talking about, and we can have some time on that. On the 15th, we have hearings around the rates and hopefully your decision on those rates up front in the meeting, because everything else in the budget kind of flows from that. We've got setting our taxes that you do every year, hearing and decision on that in the budget. Depending upon how things go on the 15th, we've got some wiggle room in terms of time, and so you can think of the December 6th meeting as a time to continue the hearing and or your deliberations. And I suppose if absolutely necessary, you know, there's still even more time in December. There's another meeting on the 20th. But certainly we anticipate, you know, we'll have the information for you to make a decision on the 15th on all of these things if you're able to. And then on the next slide, this is a summary of our take on sort of the policy issues that are in front of you as a council as you look at this budget. Certainly there's a lot of detail in the notebooks, and after we're done with this part of the presentation, Jen and RJ will kind of walk through the notebooks to describe for you what's in them and how it's laid out. But the administration and the staff have worked hard to find a balanced approach to the budget issues for 2011. So it's a constrained budget, sure, as you've seen, but it's not without investment in our future. And you can see some of those investments here. There is a small use of reserves relative to the overall level of reserve, $185,000 right now. There's a cost-neutral police position. There's a $55,000 investment in our future in terms of economic development to try to generate a more robust economy in the East County. There's the continued support, albeit reduced support, and in one case, fairly significant reduced support with respect to the Humane Society. You've already had some advocacy from the community around whether that's a choice that you should make or not. That's a decision that's in front of you. Any decision you make there that's different than the proposal, it impacts that $185,000 number. There's the ER&R funds that you had quite a bit of discussion on. There's the issue of the EMS and the supplanted dollars. Those are restricted dollars, but nonetheless, how you're going to use those as proposed is an important issue. We just talked about the fact that there'll be some decrease in level of service for the parks. So all of these things taken together with no new taxes. The administration is not proposing new taxes. The caveat around the resolution for preserving future capacity, we want to be clear about that. And the caveat around the fire issue in the Supreme Court decision where there's some mix and match between rates and utility tax, but it's embedded in the overall analysis around the rates, so it's cost neutral to the customer. So there will be an ordinance about a utility tax, but it's in that context of the rates.